Hey there. Every single day we're sending emails, buying things online, sharing all kinds of information. And we're doing it all, hopefully, securely. It all works because of these invisible shields. So today we're going to pull back the curtain on those shields and look at the powerful symmetric ciphers that keep our digital world private.
And that really is the central question, isn't it? Our systems are spread all over the globe. The internet is basically a massive open network, so how on earth do we make sure a private message actually stays private? How do you build a secure, locked room in a world that has no walls? That's the puzzle we're going to piece together.
All right, so here's our game plan. First, we'll get a handle on the basic idea behind these digital shields. Then, we're going to take a trip through time and see how they evolved from an early standard called DES to the absolute powerhouse we use today, AES. After that, we'll pop the hood and see what's really going on inside. Figure out why just a few more bits in a key can make a universe of difference, and finally, we'll look at the constant cat and mouse game between code makers and code breakers.
Okay, let's jump right in. First up, invisible digital shields. We're talking about a special kind of cryptography called symmetric or secret key ciphers. To understand this, just picture two people, we'll call them the classic Alice and Bob, who need to talk to each other without anyone eavesdropping.
The way they do it is with what's called a symmetric crypto system. And that's really just a fancy way of saying they both use the exact same secret key. Think of it like a physical key to a lockbox. Alice puts her message in the box, locks it with the key, and sends it. Bob, on the other end, uses his identical copy of that key to unlock it. Simple, right? But, and this is the big but, for any of this to work, they first have to find a totally secure way to share that one secret key. That single key is the foundation for everything.
So once you have that shared key, you're set for life, right? Well, not exactly. You see, computers are always getting faster, and attackers are always getting smarter, so our digital shields have had to evolve. They have not stood still.
This timeline here really shows the big steps in that journey. The story for most of us really begins back in 1977 with DES. This was the first major public standard for encryption, and it set the benchmark for decades. But as technology raced forward, DES started to look a little long in the tooth. So, after a few other ciphers came and went, the entire crypto community decided to do something really cool. They held a global, public competition to find the next standard. And the winner, crowned in 2001, was the Advanced Encryption Standard, or AES. And that's the cipher that protects most of your digital life today.
And you can see that evolution spelled out right here. Just look at the key size. That's probably the most important number on this whole chart. DES had a 56-bit key. Now, that seemed pretty good back in the 70s, but today it can be broken in just a few hours. But AES, it can use a key up to 256 bits long. That leap isn't just a small step up, it's a completely different dimension of security. And you can also see that the fundamental design, the core structure, changed completely, from something called a Feistel network to a much more modern substitution permutation design for AES.
So we know they got stronger, but how? I mean, how do these algorithms actually turn a normal message into what looks like complete gibberish that only one specific key can turn back? Let's get into the mechanics.
It really all boils down to two core ideas: confusion and diffusion. The easiest way to think about it is like making a smoothie. Confusion is like blending all the ingredients together so well that you can't tell where the banana ends and the strawberry begins. It's all about hiding the relationship between the key and the final encrypted text. Diffusion, on the other hand, is like adding a single drop of red food coloring and watching it spread until the entire smoothie has changed color. A tiny change in one part of the input causes a huge, cascading change across the entire output. This avalanche effect is what makes it so hard for attackers to find any patterns. So the old standard, DES, did this with a really elegant design called a Feistel structure. In every round, it takes a chunk of your data, splits it in half, it runs one half through this scrambling function that mixes it with a piece of the key, then it combines that result with the other half, and then it just swaps them. And it doesn't do this just once, it repeats this dance 16 times. The real genius here is that this whole process is perfectly reversible. To decrypt, you just run the exact same steps, but backwards. It's a beautifully simple way to create a whole lot of complexity.
Now, the real magic, the part that creates all that confusion in DES, happens inside things called S boxes, or substitution boxes. You can just think of them as little lookup tables that swap bits around based on a fixed rule. But the crucial part is that this swap is nonlinear. That just means there's no simple math formula that connects the input to the output. And that means there are no easy shortcuts for an attacker trying to work backwards.
Now, AES, our modern champion, takes a different approach. Instead of splitting the data, it treats a block of your message like a grid, a 4x4 matrix of bytes. Then, in each round, it puts that grid through a serious 4-stage workout. It substitutes bytes using its own S-box, it shifts rows around to shuffle the data, it mixes up the columns to spread any changes all over the place, that's diffusion in action, and finally, it mixes in a piece of the secret key. And this whole 4-step process gets repeated up to 14 times, scrambling the data so thoroughly it's unrecognizable.
Okay, that mixed column step uses some pretty advanced math, specifically something called a finite field. Now that sounds intimidating, but here's an easy way to think about it. Imagine a clock. On a 12-hour clock, if you add 5 hours to 8 o'clock, you don't get 13, you get 1. The numbers wrap around. A finite field is just a mathematical system like that, but with 256 numbers. Using these special rules for math lets AES mix data together in a way that is incredibly hard to untangle, but still really fast for a computer to actually do.
So we've mentioned a few times that the key size grew from 56 bits all the way up to 256. But what does that actually mean? I mean, how much safer does that really make you? The answer is a lot. This chart really puts it into perspective. See, the simplest, most straightforward way to attack a cipher is what's called a brute force attack, where you literally just try every single possible key until one of them works. The length of the key is your #1 defense against that. And as you can see, the wall that an attacker has to climb went from being pretty high with DES to towering with IDA, and then just astronomically, impossibly high with AES.
And this right here is the most important thing to understand about key size. Every single bit you add to the key doubles the number of possibilities. The difficulty doesn't just add up, it grows exponentially. Going from a 56-bit key to a 57-bit key makes it twice as hard to crack. So going from 56 to 256 bits, you're not just in a different league, you're in a completely different universe of computational impossibility.
That's the number of possible keys for AES 256. That number has 78 digits. To put that in perspective, it's a number vastly larger than the estimated number of atoms in the entire known universe. Trying to guess this key isn't just a hard problem, it is physically impossible given the laws of physics and the amount of energy available on our planet.
And that brings us to the real goal of all modern cryptography, something called computational security. This doesn't mean a code is theoretically impossible to break. It just means that the best-known way to break it would take so much time, so many computers, so much energy, that it's completely unfeasible in the real world. And with a 256-bit key, AES is pretty much the definition of computationally secure.
But here's the thing. The story doesn't end there. It never does. Cryptography is never static. It's a constant, high-stakes arms race between the people building the locks and the people trying to pick them.
The entire journey we've just seen, from the elegant but aging structure of DES to the complex finite field math of AES, is a direct result of this arms race. Every time computers get more powerful, crypto analysts find new and clever ways to attack, and that forces the designers to go back to the drawing board to build even stronger, even smarter shields.
So if there's one thing to take away from all of this, it's that security isn't some destination you just arrive at and you're done. It's a living, breathing process. The shield that's protecting your data today is the result of decades of nonstop innovation, and that process can never, ever stop. Which, of course, brings us to the final, really fascinating question. Because on the horizon, we have these game-changing technologies, especially quantum computing, that threaten to break many of the mathematical foundations that our current ciphers are built on. This means the next cryptographic arms race is already starting. So what will those future shields look like? Maybe they won't be based on pure math at all, but on the wonderfully strange principles of quantum mechanics itself.
We really hope this look inside our digital shields was interesting. If you enjoyed it and want to see more deep dives like this, the best way you can support us is to like, share, and subscribe. Thanks so much for watching.